Auburn's looking to get that bounce back win versus Richmond at home. Can they get it done? Let's go to it. Let's step inside the town.
The Auburn Express. You are now listening to the War Rapport Longtown Podcast. With your boy Ike Jones.
Lobtown Podcast, Auburn versus Richmond set to go down inside of Neville Arena. Auburn is looking to bounce back after the loss to Duke on the road in the last game. If you're watching this, go ahead and do me a favor and share this content with somebody out there so we can get more people involved in the conversation, and make sure you're subscribed to the channel. Auburn is favored in this game, 27.5 points versus Richmond. Richmond is a team that Auburn is semi-familiar with. Coach Bruce Pearl talked about this. They played Richmond a few years ago. Same head coach, so same system. So they're not coming in here with no familiarity, but they're definitely, during this age, the teams turn over so quickly, it's not going to be the same personnel. But let's get in here and talk about it a little bit. The head-to-head between the two teams, as you can see here, Auburn is predicted 97.7% chance to win, according to the ESPN matchup predictor. 11 a.m. tip-off there inside of Neville Arena. It's going to be a doubleheader, so if you are in the Auburn area, you get a chance to watch Auburn men and women's basketball. So stick around to see the women play in their game going right after the men get done there. But points for in favor of Auburn, 85.6 points per game right now on the season, 71.7 for Richmond. Coach Chris Mooney running that Princeton-style offense that is high on efficiency, low on number of possessions they're trying to get, but we'll talk more about that in just a minute. Points against, Princeton's been doing a pretty good job. They are holding teams to 67.5 points per game, while Auburn is averaging holding teams to 68.8. Field goal percentage in favor of Auburn, 51.5%, 42.5 for Richmond, 75.9% versus the 73.8 right there from the free throw line for Auburn in favor there. Rebounds per game goes in favor of the Tigers just slightly there at 37.5 versus the 37.1. 18 assists per game is above the Richmond 10.8 points assists per game. Blocks in favor of Auburn at 5.6 versus the 2.1 for Richmond, and 6.1 steals versus Richmond 6.3 steals. So just a few tenths of a percentage point more there for Richmond. Richmond coming in at 4-4 on the season, and most recently won their last game versus Ball State. They had one of those in-season tournaments there where they fell just short and played in the third place game and were able to defeat Ball State there 73-60. And Auburn, of course, again, coming off of the loss to Duke most recently. Auburn should be able to handle business in this game. It is a game that favors the Tigers fairly heavily by a couple of different statistics when you look at just kind of how these two teams play. So I don't expect Auburn to have trouble here, but it's one of those games where they're going to have to not come in lackadaisical. They've been high on the Maui and Duke situation where they've had a bunch of teams that they've had to go and show their best against. They can't have a letdown versus Richmond because this is a team that is going to be disciplined enough to make you pay if you are out there not paying attention to what you have to do. I don't expect Bruce Pearl to have his team not ready to play, but if they don't come in with the right mentality, it's going to be a tougher game than it needs to be. You look at the statistical leaders for both teams out here, and you see Janai Broome still dominating for Auburn in points, rebounds, and blocks. Assists per game at Denver Jones, who has taken on more of the point guard duties this season. Todd Pettiford tied with a couple of people, but he is the leader right now in steals for Auburn. When you look at the Richmond Spiders, it is Delani Hunt who is the leading scorer, really by a pretty large margin. He is the offense for this team, primarily at 20 points per game. The next leading scorer for the team is Tyne, is Beagle. Tyne is the next one after that. But Ramaglu there, the transfer from UConn, is the leader in rebounds and block shots for them. He is going to have his hands full with Janai Broome. but they are, or excuse me, with Janai Broome, because he is playing the 4 spot for them. So it's going to be interesting to see whether they play him or Beagle, who's the center there, who's the leader in assist for this team. And when we talk about this offense, we'll get more into Beagle and how he's a focal point for what they want to do. And then the steals leader is Hunt there. For the Spiders. When you switch it over and look at the potential starting lineups for the teams here, and these are the lineups that have been starting the last few games for Auburn: Denver Jones, Miles Kelly, Chad Baker-Mazar, Janai Broome, and Dylan Cardwell versus Tyne, Hunt, Roche, Ramaglu, and Beagle. You see there is a distinct height difference here. I do expect Auburn to have the advantage on a couple of places: rebounding and being able to force tough shots in the paint. Auburn is definitely the bigger team here. This is a game where Tahad Pettiford actually should be able to play more heavy minutes because he's not going to have height disadvantages, even with a lot of the switching defense that Auburn's going to do versus this Princeton-style offense. I do expect some heavy games and some productivity there from the point guard position in terms of Tahad Pettiford out there, because he's going to be able to go against guys that are more his height in this game, as opposed to last game getting switched out and having to deal with some taller players. But overall, he's done a good job. But anyway, if you notice there, not a lot of scoring for this team in their starting lineup. Really, the threats there are going to be Roche, who is a phenomenal 3-point shooter, and of course, Hunt, the leading score for the team, is going to be a problem. But when you talk about this offense, really it is about Beagle. Now, Hunt might be the leading scorer, but because of the Princeton style offense that they do, they run a lot of it through the high post. And if you are a Green Name gang, I might get an opportunity to show you guys a little bit of this on film. But when they get the ball into the high post and they get a lot of those back cuts, that is really how they generate offense, and the dribble handoffs and the curls that come off of that offense are something that you're going to have to figure out how to defend effectively. And you need to be able to bottle it up right there at the high post. And Beagle is the guy. He is the leading assist man for the team for a reason, because they run a lot of their offense through him in the high post. When we go and we talk a little bit more and dive into the statistics for this game, you see, when you look at the two teams here comparatively, the Auburn offense, again, scoring 85.6 points per game. Richmond only giving up 67.5. The free throw rate, Richmond's putting teams on the free throw line at a fairly high rate here at 41.3% of the time. Something that Auburn has not done a good job of getting to the free throw line. But they could definitely do that here against Richmond because they are a team that has been putting teams on the line. So 41.3% of the time they're doing that. But Auburn's not getting to the line a lot this season. From a 2-point percentage standpoint, Auburn is shooting the ball fairly well on the interior, not fairly well, excellently on the interior there. 63.2% of the time they are making those 2-point baskets, 36.7% on three. Richmond still giving up over 30%. I expect Auburn to shoot well from three versus this team. They have the height advantage. They should be able to see over the top and get clear looks at the bucket. Effective field goal percentage there for Auburn at 59.7. Richmond, again, doing a good job at 47.9% there. Turnover percentage, Richmond is turning over teams fairly well, 14.2% of the time, but I wouldn't say that they are a team that is prone to get a lot of turnovers. When you look at that comparatively to what they're doing on the road versus what Auburn is doing at home, you see Auburn is scoring over 91 points per game at home. This could be a scoring bonanza there at home for Auburn. The free throw rate, Richmond, 61.2%. They are absolutely sending teams to the free throw line a lot when they are on the road. 2-point percentage, Auburn is up to 70% there and almost 40% from three. Now, Richmond's done a better job on the road of defending the 3-point shot, but they are giving up those twos at almost a 56% clip. Effective field goal percentage, Auburn, of course, up at above 65%. Richmond down at 47.1, and not great, but not terrible. And then they do turn teams over fairly well on the road. They've been better on the road defensively than they have been at home overall on the season so far. Flip it over to the other side and you start to look at offense here for Richmond versus the defense for Auburn. And you see Auburn, again, giving up 68.8%, but Richmond only scoring 71.7. So even if Richmond reaches their season totals here, I expect this to be a pretty big win. Probably, I don't know if they're going to cover, but they should be able to cover in this game, Auburn. Based upon just kind of what the statistics say. And we'll see that more clearly when we talk about what Richmond has done on the road. The free throw rate, Auburn still sending teams to the free throw line a little bit too much. But Richmond, not a team that gets to the free throw line a ton, 39.6%, which is good, but not great. 2-point percentage, they're shooting just above 51%, but Auburn holding teams below 45% at 44.1. 3-point percentage, Richmond is not a team that flourishes at the 3-point line other than Roche. Roche is a really good free throw 3-point shooter for this team. He's shooting close to 50% from three on the season. So he's definitely a guy that Auburn's going to want to make sure that they run off the 3-point line. The effective field goal percentage, about the same of what they average and what Auburn gives up. And then the turnover percentage, about what they give up is what Auburn is forcing teams into. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out during this game. When you flip it, though, and you talk about what Richmond has done while they are on the road, you can see that this Auburn team is poised to do what they typically do to teams at home versus this Richmond team. Auburn's only given up just south of 64 points. Richmond's barely hitting 62 there. The free throw rate, Richmond's not getting to the line a bunch. Auburn's not surrendering it a bunch. 2-point percentage. Richmond shooting 50%, but Auburn holding teams to 37.9. I expect that to actually be closer to the Auburn number based on the height advantage that's there for Auburn. If they're able to play disciplined against this team defensively. And then 3-point percentage, again, really a putrid level of 3-point percentage there on the road, and Auburn not surrendering a bunch anyway. But I don't expect Richmond to threaten externally. They have a height disadvantage on the interior, so Auburn's going to run them off the 3-point line, run them 2 shot blockers, and then make them try to finish over length. It's going to be difficult there. Effective field goal percentage, Auburn holding teams at 38% while inside of Neville Arena. Richmond only shooting 41.2%, and they're turning the ball over at 13.4 rate, which is not very bad. Auburn at 17.9 at home, which is much better. But again, the big thing for this game is really going to be Richmond's going to want to slow the game down. They're going to want to try to be patient on offense. They're going to work the shot clock, a lot of passes before they get into a shot, because they want to be able to get the best shot available every single time. Auburn's going to need to be very disciplined on defense to make sure they're not giving up easy buckets to a Richmond team that's going to try to, again, work it through the high post, backdoor cuts, and get you out leveraged to try to get a good clean shot at the rim. And if it doesn't work, then they're going to try to work the low post there with the big man. But the duck down in the post is going to be something that you'll see quite a bit. Janai Broome, Dylan Cardwell going to need to stay out of foul trouble in order to continue to make this an effective defense against this Princeton offense. And I expect to see, because of the way the Princeton offense works, and if there is some foul trouble, Auburn to go to a little bit of a zone, because this Richmond team doesn't shoot the ball particularly well from outside. So they may try to force them to fight against the set defense there in the zone. It's going to impact the rebounding, but Auburn's going to attempt to force a lot of turnovers, get the tempo going against this Richmond team who plays fairly well in the half court defensively. I expect them to be doubling Janai Broome quite a bit when he gets his touches, particularly when he gets them on the low block. They're going to try to come and double him pretty frequently during this game, if my suspicions are correct there. Overall, they play more of a matchup zone, similarly to how Auburn is, where they're switching a lot of the action, which means that Auburn can get into a lot of disadvantages for Richmond, meaning Janai Broome getting the duck down stuff off of the action might be getting a smaller guy on him if they're going to switch some of that stuff, which is, again, why I expect to see double teams happen when he does get his touches. But he likes to go quickly before those double teams. But because he can see over the top of a lot of the players that he's going to be against, I expect Janai Broome to have a high assist game in this one, as long as the Auburn players are knocking down their shots. Again, this isn't a game where I expect Richmond to put up much of a fight, but Auburn needs to come in focused, because this Richmond team's going to want to grind out this this one and take away as many possessions as they can, and then probably play sound defensively to force difficult shots, and then hopefully they can secure the rebounds. But if Auburn, with their height advantage and with their advantage as far as just skilled players and the waves of bodies that they can send at you handles business, this should be a comfortable victory for Auburn inside of Neville Arena. But I do want to hear some score predictions from you all. Who do you think is going to win, and what do you think the final score is going to be? Put that right down there in the comment section. And while you are down there, make sure that you go ahead and like this video. If you haven't already, subscribe to the channel. Share the content with somebody. We'll be back at you with more great Auburn Express War Report content later. But until the next time, and as always, War Eagle.